Please welcome to the stage director and writer James Bobin and Ty Burrell. Neither of you heard that, but there were big gasps from the front of excitement from this front row. Wish we'd had them mic'd up.
That was me.
Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi.
James, first of all, congratulations on another brilliant Muppet film.
Thank you. No, thank you. It's my pleasure. My pleasure.
Ty, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay. What was it like for you, and is like for you, being submerged in the world of these characters?
Well, they basically had to be patient with me. You know, it's sort of like, don't work with kids and animals, but also don't work with, Ty Burrell. They're a very finely tuned machine. You know, they've been at it for, I don't know, however many years.
60 years.
60 years. And they're generally doing about 7 things at once. And I'm basically just trying to say my line. So, you try to kind of gently and humbly, find the rhythm, and they're also just a lovely group of guys, so they made it very easy.
When did you know there was going to be a sequel?
Well, when I was making the first one, I was kind of thinking all the time what we would do next, and the first one kind of ends in a very open way, and so I thought, well, because it's a Muppets movie, we can ask that very question in the movie itself. So the film starts with everyone going, well, what are we going to do now? And I love that idea. You can just do that in a Muppets film. And then, of course, you then go into a song called We Are Doing a Sequel. It's the first song in the movie, which is kind of like not even of the movie. Then the movie itself then starts. So that was kind of how I wanted to start the movie.
Do you get creative license then, working on a film?
Yeah, in a way
like
you
this,
never would with anything else. And it's the joy of writing this is you can write stuff that you probably wouldn't get away with anywhere else. And that's just a great it's freedom as a writer. It's really fun.
And how did the film come together in terms of, do you have in your head who you want, in terms of real actors along with those Muppets, and then the story then kind of wrote itself?
There are people in the world. There's two sorts of people in the world. There are people who are Muppety, and there are people who are not Muppety. And Ty is Muppety.
Please take that as a compliment. I hope.
No, it's a compliment. I very much mean that as a compliment.
I absolutely do. I think. I've been asked, like, who's your favorite Muppet, and the more time I kind of ruminate on that thought, it's not my favorite Muppet, but I'm starting to realize that Jean-Pierre is just a hair's breadth away from being a Muppet.
That's very true.
Yeah.
And what about in terms of the kind of musical elements to the film as well? Does that come after? Is that in your head as your...
Not really. It's all part of the same process in script writing. When I'm writing with Nick, we write the script together, and then every now and then we'd have a thought, this would be a good place for a song. And often we just write the title of the song in. We're doing a sequel, number 1, number 2, something like that. And then we give that to Brett. And then, having worked with Brett for many years on Friday the Conchords, we have a very good sort of shorthand together. Yeah. And so Brett would literally take the title, or maybe just the idea, paragraph, what it could be about, and then go away for like 2 months and then come back with something which is automatically brilliant and usable. And I give him no notes, and we just make whatever he wants to make, because he's really funny and gets it every time. And I'm just so lucky to have him, because these songs in this film are so fantastic. They tell the story, they're funny, and they're catchy. He's very good at melody. And that's I've got kids, and I know that melody is very important for them. You have to, you want to be humming the tunes. And he's a very good tune meister, I say. So, he's really good at that, and that's a great gift.
With your double act, sir, with yourself and your character Jean-Pierre and Eagle,
I see. Yeah,
it is a great double act. There are great double acts in the world, and they make a good double act.
Yeah, well,
do I hear spin-off?
yeah.
Ooh.
I see. There's a buddy cop movie there.
No doubt.
I'm too old for this stuff. That's for me. And then he's always in a fight with the sergeant. Yeah. Well, from the outset, there's all the running gags of America versus Europe, basically. So there's tons of tension there from the beginning, and then I love the arc that we basically have just like complete and total platonic love for each other by the time the end.
We can see a bit of an example of that right now, actually.
Okay.
So this is the first meeting.
They kept showing me cups for that scene with Ty and the tiny cup, and I kept going, nope, smaller. Nope, smaller. And
we're not sure it's registering on camera. Smaller.
He came back with this tiny, perfect, that's it.
Almost can't hold it, it's so small.
I'm really regretting
Sam's
not
gigantic
having
cup as well.
put that in my jacket. Yeah.
It's probably as well, we're talking about creative license, but probably one of the few things where you can get away with heightening stereotypes and things like that as well. And Jean-Pierre kind of pulls on all those, those French characters that we've seen little bits here and there of.
Well, when you're playing with Sam the Eagle, he's such a super patriotic American. Obviously, the person who's going to hate the most in the whole world is a super European French guy. Well, so that was perfect.
It almost feels like if it was possible to create one country that was called Europe, we would have done that. Like if I could have spoken European, I would have. But it was meant to be just sort of an overall, Europe versus America. But French seemed to sort of accomplish that.
But it's a very gentle lampooning. I mean, speaking of lampooning, it does feel to me like National Lampoon's European Vacation at a point. Yeah. But that's good. That's the kind of attitude it should have, I think.
Where when you're writing it, and I don't know if you considered how successful the first film was as well, but in terms of the tone that you want it to feel and who you want it, because it does appeal to such a variety of ages.
Yeah, well, it has to. I mean, I remember the Muppet Show when I was watching in the 70s at home in my granny's house. I watched it with my entire family, and we'd all watch it together, and we'd laugh at different bits, and I'd laugh at this bit, and then my dad would laugh behind me. I'd go, "What are you laughing at? This is my show." Yeah. And I think he felt the same thing, and I think this is about the idea that I'm now the dad, and my daughter is now me, and I'm watching the film with her, and we're laughing at different bits, but really enjoying it together, and I love that idea, because that's pretty rare.
I had a similar experience, and I think that it was, one of its time. It was one of the few places where families were watching it all at once. And I remember my dad laughing at Stadler and Waldorf, and it influencing my sense of humor, basically, because I didn't really get what Stadler and Waldorf were talking about, but I really thought my dad was hilarious. So then you kind of just go, okay, well, that's funny, whatever that is. Eventually I'm going to figure that out.
You've created a monster as well. I hope you know that.
How do you mean?
In Constantine.
Oh, I see. Yes.
Because even though he's the villain of the film, I don't think people want this to be the end of him.
Yeah. I hope it's not. He's really funny.
He's hilarious.
Matt Vogel, who plays him in the first Muppets I did, played Uncle Deadly, the kind of evil dragon guy, and he was just really funny the whole time. And so I thought he'd be very good for Constantine because he's very witty, and also I knew I'd be casting someone, Ricky, with him. And so to keep up with Ricky Gervais improvising, you've got to be pretty funny. And so he is just so fantastic from the get-go. And he's obviously a brilliantly skilled puppeteer, because initially we designed Constantine, he was a different colour to Kermit. He was like a lighter green.
Okay.
And I thought, I don't want it to be confusing. But when Matt performed him, not only is his hand a different shape, but he's also, the physicality of the character he brings is so different. I realised you can make him exactly the same, and it wouldn't matter. You'd know it's not Kermit.
Yeah.
And so he's just it's so amazing, fantastic.
We'll talk more about that in a second, but this is a clip with Constantine and Ricky talking about their evil plan. You mentioned improvisation there. Was there much?
Yes, in that clip you just saw, burglary, not written.
Really?
No, that happened. I mean, Gervais instantly got on very well with Matt, and so it was very quickly apparent they'd do some fun stuff. And sometimes it went on for far too long, and sometimes it really worked. And that one really worked, so it's in the movie.
Wow, I hope we're going to have an extended, kind of extras.
There is
going
to be a very long DVD available later on. Yes.
What about for your character, Ty? Was there much opportunity for you and Eagle to kind of have a bit of fun?
There was.
With that?
I don't think we didn't do a ton of it, but there's little things here and there.
At the end, when you make up, there's a bit of stuff in there. Here Comes the Rain, one of your ones.
Oh yeah.
That's very sweet.
Yeah.
Ty starts to cry when he hugs Sam at the end. It's very sweet. Yeah. Here Comes the Rain.
It was interesting. Earlier, I heard Ricky say today, because someone asked a question about kind of, I think they were talking about other fictional characters, and he said the difference with this is they're real, and so you get to act opposite someone because you forget that
as opposed to
like a CGI or a tennis ball, that type of thing. Because you forget that these puppeteers are incredible stand-up comedians, actors, and it's there, it's in front of you. That make it easier.
Oh yeah, having done both, it really is. It's an incredible thing, and these guys are so they're so guys, men and women are so experienced at it and are so present that every scene is different because of it. Everything's affected by it. It's you really. I said that before, but you're really kind of trying to keep up with them.
Yeah, you really feel they're real. Like, I feel like I know Steve Whitmire, who plays Kermit, but I also know Kermit the Frog, who's a different person in my mind. And so it's a very strange experience.
Yeah.
I had to sit next to him at a press conference today, and it was just like, he's looking at me. It's actually Kermit looking at me.
Yeah,
it's
real.
real line.
It's a crazy thing, isn't it? Because the first day of my filming, which was actually the train scene, my first day was with every Muppet, essentially. And if you were to see, you grow up admiring something or somebody, and then you see them 30 years later, or even what you just see somebody like a week later, you see a celebrity, and they look more human. They've aged. There's flaws. When you see the Muppets, it's your childhood right in front of you. It's an incredible thing to have them be exactly what they always were, and. I mean, it's really absurd and wonderful and nerve-wracking.
Well, that's something that from the old TV shows and stuff. There's this warmth from that family, and family's part of that whole thing as well. Theme that comes out in the film. You've managed to hold on to that, and it feels incredibly true to what the Muppets started off trying to be about as well in your films.
Yeah, well, I mean, to me, they're very innocent. They're very optimistic and innocent, and I love that about it. So much of the world these days is neither of those two things. So it's nice to have one last bastion of that idea. And it's what I remember from being a kid, about the warmth, about the fact that they're not very good at what they do. They are, Fozzie's a bad comedian, and Gonzo's a terrible stuntman, and Piggy can't really sing. But they try their best, and also they kind of support each other, and together they can do amazing things. And again, that's a message that will never ever date. And I think that's why we love them, is because they are the essential underdogs. It's so nice.
I don't want to give anything away with regards to cameos, because there are some incredible, just genius positioning of cameos in this film as well. How do you go about that? Do you write it in initially and then you approach people? Do people come to you?
Yeah,
please
both.
let me be in the
Yeah. Well, you get both. I mean, often Nick and I will be writing and we have an idea which is very specific for a person. I don't want to give anything away because obviously there's some good ones in the film, but often we have a person's name who's in the script. And I can say Celine Dion's in the film, we know that, right? So Celine Dion was an idea we had when Piggy has a kind of crisis about her love life, and it's like she emotes it through a song. And so she's going to get love advice from some guardian angel character. Who would be the most amusing person to show up halfway through the song? Would be Celine Dion. And so obviously we phoned her up and thinking she'd never say yes, and she said yes, because people love the Muppets. It's amazing. And so she said yes. And so the next day we're on set, and she walks on from the side and sings a duet with Piggy. And it's totally lovely. And it's that great thing about the Muppets is that people have such an affection for them that generally when you say, do you want to be in the Muppet movie? They say yes, which is great.
I've never come across somebody when you say, like, do you like the Muppets? They're like, not for me. No, it's not.
Yeah, you could get thing. Anyone. Yeah. You could have anyone.
Within scheduling reasons, So
I'm sure they change it. Right, I'm sure you guys have some questions, so don't leave it to the last minute. Get in straight away with questions. Good girl, right in the middle there. And we've got a microphone winning its way to you now. There we go.
Just to ask, if you had a choice, would you be a man or a Muppet?
I'm dangerously close to being both, so I don't think I have to make that Sophie's choice.
I think these days I'm almost 100% Muppet, I'm afraid. I've been doing it for too long now.
Great question. Next one, right behind you. If you could pass the mic behind you, that'd be great.
Could I ask you James, can you tell us a little bit more about your writing process? How does it, from you sit down, blank sheet of paper, then, do you work at a structure? Do you brainstorm? What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, blank sheet of paper is the worst case scenario, obviously. Generally, I think writing is about getting anything down and then working from that way onwards. We had an idea for this one we wanted to do with it. So I'm also a great believer in outlining scripts. You really want to outline it from the very early stage and get a sense of where it's going to go. So we had an idea. We had the character in mind of Constantine, a good doppelganger for Kermit. We had a structure we wanted to do, and we break it down into like a 20-page outline, and that's how we work to begin with. And then once you get writing, I'm writing with Nick, and in my experience that is a bit easier because I'm having a conversation with a friend sometimes, and it's sometimes easy to get started. But generally the rule of thumb for me is always get something down, no matter what it is, because you can always come back and do it again another time and make it better, but always get something down because you have something to work from. So it's a long. Obviously, it's a very simplified version of it, and it takes months. But generally, the work is often in the outline, and if you get that right, then the rest of it comes fairly straightforwardly.
Do you like sit in an office and do it? Do you like kind of?
No, I go to
9 to 5?
Nick's house and we eat sandwiches and we write the film script together. This is lovely. It's like one of my best times ever on the whole process. Is eating sandwiches with Nick, writing jokes. That's really fun.
Yeah.
But I also write films by myself, so that's just in my office at work. I just sit by myself at a computer, which is less sociable, but you can do it.
Yeah. Next question.
Ty, I thought your French accent was really good, and I'm just wondering. Has your French accent always been that good, or did you have to practice?
Well, I'm not sure where to start. I'm not sure if it was great, but thank you for saying that. That's very nice. There was a wonderful woman named Jill McCullough. By the way, your American accent is fantastic. A wonderful woman named Jill McCullough, who is a really talented dialect coach, I worked with her sort of via Skype before. Well, I should go back and even before and say that James, in the first phone call, I had said, I don't remember, some sort of like pretentious question about like, where in France should I try to locate this accent? And he was basically, he said, in the comedy region of France. In the comedy area of France.
And French accent 101, that's what I said.
Yeah. So I had very loose boundaries, which makes it much easier because I'm not Daniel Day-Lewis. I hate to.
Oh, come on.
Yeah. So I worked with her, and then on set I would finish, and she was basically there nearby to come and do it correctly after I'd finished. I had somebody there. I kind of was just slowly trying to get her to just do it instead of me, like to just dub my lines. But,
How much of the character was created, and how much were you allowed to be involved in kind of
well,
who he was?
As James said earlier, and James made it clear from the beginning that we had very, very loose boundaries, which was amazing. But it was an obvious homage to who you would think, which is Clouseau and I guess Poirot and any other,
Amalgam of all French people ever.
It's a night of 1,000 French stars.
Or even, in fact, have you seen the British comedy from, I think, the 80s, Allo Allo? The French policeman
he's
slightly in there as well.
That,
you need to watch that.
Okay,
yeah.
And probably even, it's such an amalgam. It's like also borrowing from other people who have imitated other French performances. But that's what's so fun about the Muppets too, though, is that it holds everything. It really does seem to hold everything. It's just as long as the spirit is right, and they've always had such an earnest feeling to them, and if the spirit is that earnest spirit, I think it seems like it holds everything.
Yeah. Any more questions from you guys? Oh, here we go. Oh, yes. Look who she's got with her.
That's a great beaker you
I'm
have
so
there.
glad
Excellent.
you
Hello,
asked the
Beaker.
question. I was hoping you were going to.
Hi, I was going to say, if you can't pick a favourite Muppet, which I was going to ask that, but
Right.
which one do you feel you relate to the most?
Well, that's hard. I would
It's
say
easy for me because it's Kermit, because he has my job. Kermit and I are the same
Yeah,
person.
yeah.
I'm in charge, he's in charge. He has the same problems that I have in
Yeah.
wrangling the Muppets to make a film, or he makes to make a show. I am Kermit, he is me. That's who I most relate to.
I've floated enough bad jokes out there to qualify me as a Fozzie Bear. Yeah.
Waka waka. Okay, gentleman right here in the corner.
Thank you. James, on behalf of Muppet fans everywhere, I want to thank you for making 2 amazing films.
My pleasure.
Are you up for making a 3rd film, and are there any plans in the pipeline already?
I'd love to, of course. I mean, look, I spent 4 years with these guys, and I've always loved them all my whole life. And now I've met them, worked with them, I love them even more. So they're like my friends now. So I'd love to. We haven't got any plans, but you never know. This film very much has an open ending, like they all should do. And Muppet films don't necessarily follow other ones. So they can literally do anything. They're amazing. And I'm so pleased to have my daughter, when I first started making the Muppets films, didn't know who they were. And that felt like totally wrong to me. So I'm so pleased now she not only knows who they are, but she now starts watching old Muppet Show DVDs. And that's really fun. And I love that this is a very important thing for me, that puppeteering is a very old, traditional form of entertainment. And we're like the last people doing it. And I really want to keep that going. So for me, I really hope so.
Does the Muppets feel like a a British thing to you or an American thing to
Well,
you?
weirdly,
Or a bit
yes,
both?
because of course I watched it as a kid thinking it's a show from England, but happened to have Americans in it. But if you go to America, they think very differently, where they completely think it's an American show. But it has a slightly weird Anglo feel to it in a way, because obviously by the end of this Muppet show, there were English writers on the Muppet show, and English crew, English director, all that sort of thing.
So what exactly is that history?
Well, basically the show was made here
Right.
in between 1976 and 1981 for 5 years, because Jim couldn't get it going. In America, he pitched it to ABC in 1974, and they said no, because adults would never like puppets. And so he very cleverly brought it to here, to Lou Gray, to ATC, or whatever it's called, ATV. And Lou Gray saw the potential of it and said, let's make this show. So they brilliantly made the show in England and then sold it back to America for a huge amount of money. And so they did really well out of it. So good luck to him.
I think
Exactly.
I think I do think that there was a sensibility with the Muppets that
totally.
that was exotic in some weird way that we obviously didn't know anything about. We had weren't aware of it.
Yeah, but my
made
theory
anyway.
about that is when you're writing, you can't help but absorb your environment. So if these guys like Jerry Jewell and Frank are also living in England, when you go home at night, you watch The Goodies or you watch Monty Python or whatever, and this very much feels like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so even though they were American, they were living in England, therefore you can't be but be influenced by your environment. So I'm pretty sure it's got a very interesting Anglo-American tone, which is why to Americans it feels like a weird show because it has an English element to it.
I think that sounds right.
From your history of watching it growing up, who is your favourite guest?
I like Peter Sellers, but that's because I'm quite dark. And Peter Sellers in the show, Kermit says to him, "Why do you never appear as Peter Sellers?" And Peter Sellers looks him straight in the eye. This is on live TV effectively, and he says, "I don't know who that is anymore." And it's like the saddest, most heartbreaking thing I've ever seen an actor say on TV and be kept in, like real. And so for me as an adult, that's an amazing thing. But he's also very funny in the show. But it's like, that's incredible that only to a Muppet could you admit that sort of thing. It's amazing.
You know what's crazy is that I genuinely don't remember the guest stars. I really don't. I think the Muppets were such a strong presence, and we watched every week. But I think it's kind of like when you watch kids actually be in the same room with the Muppets. Yeah. They don't notice the puppeteer. They're very drawn to the imagination and the creative part of the puppet. Yeah. To me, it's just my memories are kind of like sketches of the intro and of the Swedish Chef and flashes of all of that stuff, but no humans at all.
Pigs in space.
Exactly.
But that intro as well is when I was lucky enough
obviously,
to see
as
the
soon as I
film.
could do that, I did that straight away because that's the thing everyone remembers so well, the opening scene. And actually, that thing is incredibly hard to shoot. If I'd known how hard that was,
Really?
I probably would have put it in 2 movies. Because now in this one and the first one, this one has a version in Spanish, which is really fun in Madrid. But yeah, it's a really complex thing. And in fact, if you look at, there's a good book called Of Muppets and Men, which is a 70s book about how they made the Muppet Show. And the cover of that is the part of them filming the opening sequence. Yeah. And it's guys in gigantic flares holding puppets up, basically. But it's a really funny idea of how they made it. And that is a very complex thing to shoot.
What was the hardest thing to shoot on this film?
On this one, there's an opening number, which is called We're Doing a Sequel, where there's a shot where they're basically sort of Busby Berkeley, Esther Williams tribute thing, where it's a group of Muppets, which is always the hardest thing to shoot moving, and they come down a staircase, which is impossible. And then, because obviously as they're coming down a staircase, you have to fill in the set behind them, because the set otherwise will be a gigantic hole. So as they move towards camera, we have guys under the stairs pulling the stairs up to make it feel real. And then at the end of that move, which is impossible, we pan over to like 20 swimmers who dive in sequence in time to the music. And that shot...
That's a oneer?
That's a oneer. Wow. It took me all day to do that shot. And I was like seriously sweating at the end of the day. But yeah, that was a big one.
Wow. Any more questions from you guys? Gentlemen here.
Do you see this film as a homage to the Great Muppet Caper?
Well, to a degree, yes. Obviously, they have done a caper movie before, 1978 or what it was. So I love that film. I think it's fantastic, and the performances are fantastic. But the story of this is very different. But I felt there's no harm in this film's really for me about once they were back together again as a family, what they would do next. And I wanted it to be kind of an adventure film. And I think a caper is such an old school idea. The Muppets fit really nicely into it. And of course, people will remember the caper very fondly. So it feels like a Muppet kind of universe place. So it felt a very natural progression. So it's a kind of a tip of the hat to it rather than homage, I guess, in some way.
And our last question, who would like... Little guy at the back. Hello? Should we hold on? Let's get a microphone to you.
How's it like filming in London?
So fun. My wife loves this city so much, as do I. But my wife, when I found out that I was shooting over here, was elated, and we walked all over the city. And you have an amazing home.
Yeah, well, I loved it, obviously, because I'm from here. Even though I live in LA now, it's like coming home for me. But also for the Muppets, it's like coming home, because the show is from here. So it felt really nice to bring everyone back. And in fact, what I could do is I could hire puppeteers who hadn't done Muppets since the 70s. Louise Gold, who played Annie Sue in the Muppet Show, I got her back to be Annie Sue in this movie.
Oh, wow.
And that was a really cool thing to be able to do. So that was really fun.
Wow, amazing.
Really amazing.
What an amazing story, and a great way to end our Q&A tonight. The film's out this weekend, guys. Go and see it. It's everything that you want it to be and more. And thank you so much for your time and your questions tonight.
Thanks,
Ty
guys.
and James,
everybody.
everyone.